The entire bar went silent the second he walked in. 6 men in black suits, a tattooed Mafia boss, and a little girl crying like her world was ending. Everyone knew better than to move. Everyone, except Anne. She stepped forward, said 5 words that should have gotten her killed, and the most dangerous man in the city looked at her like she'd just saved his life. What? She didn't know. That moment would make her a target, pull her into a war she never asked for, and force her to choose between walking away clean or protecting the family that wasn't supposed to be hers. The Monarch bar went still. Ice cubes stopped clinking. Glasses paused mid-air. Every eye in the room turned toward the center of the floor, where 6 men in tailored suits stood like statues. And in the middle of them, a man who looked carved from stone and shadows held a little girl in a black dress. She buried her face in his neck, and her cries echoed off the mahogany walls like a prayer no one dared answer. His eyes found Anne's across the bar, dark and haunted, tattoos snaking up from his collar like smoke. Before her manager could grab her arm, Anne was already moving. She didn't know his name was Alex Shawn. She didn't know he was the man the city feared most. She only knew one thing: no child should sound that heartbroken. If you want to discover what happened when Anne reached that forbidden table, and how one act of courage sparked a love that defied an empire, stay with this story. Every moment brings you closer to the truth. Don't forget to give this video a like, hit that subscribe button, and tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from. Your support helps us bring you even more incredible stories. Now, let's get into the story. The split in Anne's work shoes wouldn't close no matter how much duct tape she used. She'd been on her feet since noon, covering a double shift that started at the diner on 5th and ended here at the Monarch bar, the kind of place where a single bottle of wine cost more than her rent. Her reflection in the staff bathroom mirror told the story she tried to hide. Exhaustion carved into the shadows beneath her brown eyes. Dark hair pulled into a bun so tight it made her temples throb. 27 years old, and she felt like she'd lived 3 lifetimes. Anne, table 9 needs their champagne. Marco, the floor manager, snapped his fingers like she was invisible. She grabbed the tray and moved through the elegantly lit space. The Monarch wasn't just a bar, it was a cathedral of power. Crystal chandeliers cast amber light across marble floors. Leather booths lined the walls. The air smelled like cigar smoke, aged whiskey, and money. She didn't belong here. Every shift reminded her of that. The night had been relentless since 8 p.m. Politicians, CEOs, men whose cufflinks cost more than her car. Anne navigated between tables with quiet efficiency, smiling politely while her back ached and her feet screamed. At 10:15, everything changed. The massive oak doors swung open, and silence rippled through the room like a shockwave. Anne looked up from pouring water and felt her breath catch. 6 men in black suits entered first, their eyes scanning the bar with lethal precision. They moved like wolves, silent, watchful, predatory. Then he walked in. Anne had never seen someone command space just by breathing. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back, a jawline sharp enough to cut, and a suit tailored so perfectly it looked like armor. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold, dark, intense, and flickering with something dangerous. A little girl clung to his neck, her face buried in his shoulder. She wore a black dress with white trim and shiny patent leather shoes. Her small hands gripped his collar like she was holding on for dear life. "Dio mio," Marco whispered beside Anne, his voice strangled. "That's Alex Shawn." Anne didn't recognize the name, but she understood fear. Every server had pressed themselves against the walls. Even Giovanni, the owner, had appeared from the back office, pale and sweating. "Who is he?" Anne whispered. Marco stared at her like she'd asked who the president was. "Just stay behind the bar. Do not approach. Do not look at him. Understand?" But Anne was already watching the child. The girl couldn't be more than 8 years old, dressed like she was attending a funeral. As her father tried to set her down in the corner booth, her whimpers turned to full-throated wails. "Kelly, per favor." The man's voice was deep, commanding even in desperation. "Papa needs you to breathe, Piccola." The girl's cries only intensified. Anne's chest tightened. She knew that sound. Grief, loss, the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and shattered inside. Alex Shawn tried everything, he whispered in Italian. He pulled a small teddy bear from his coat pocket. He offered her water from the table. Nothing worked. Kelly screamed like her world was ending, and maybe it was. The other patrons shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered. A few signaled for their checks. Anne watched the most powerful man in the room crumble. He held his daughter close, his broad shoulders curving inward like he was trying to shield her from the entire world. She'd taken 3 steps toward them before her brain caught up with her feet. "Anne," Marco hissed, grabbing her wrist. "Stop." She didn't stop. The bodyguards moved instantly, stepping into her path. One placed a hand on her shoulder, not rough, but firm enough to freeze her in place. She looked past them, directly at Alex Shawn. His eyes met hers storm-dark, exhausted, and for just a second, almost pleading. Anne's voice came out quiet but steady. "She just needs love." The room held its breath. Alex raised one hand. The guards stepped back. "Let her through." Anne had no idea that in crossing that floor, she'd just walked into the most dangerous and the most beautiful chapter of her life. She didn't know about the explosion, the betrayal, the empire built on blood and loyalty. She only saw a child in pain and a father breaking under the weight of it. But Alex Shawn knew. He knew the moment she stepped forward that this woman, this fearless bartender with worn shoes and kind eyes, was either going to save them both or destroy everything he'd built to keep his daughter safe. And for the first time in 6 months, he felt something other than rage. He felt hope. The next evening, Anne was wiping down the last table when headlights cut through the rain-streaked windows. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, water spraying beneath its tires. 2 men in dark suits stepped out. Marco dropped the glass he was holding. It shattered across the floor, but he didn't move to clean it. He just stared. The door opened. The taller of the 2 men scanned the bar before his eyes landed on Anne. "Miss Wilson, Mr. Shawn requests your presence." Anne's stomach dropped. "I'm working." "He's waiting." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a command. It was simply the way things were going to happen. Marco nodded frantically at her. "Go. Just go." The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building Anne had only ever seen from the street. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, lights glittering like scattered diamonds. The furniture was modern, expensive, cold except for one corner where toys lay scattered across a plush rug. And there, beside a grand piano, sat Kelly. She was so still she looked like a porcelain doll. Her small hands rested in her lap, her eyes fixed on a silver-framed photograph of a beautiful woman with dark hair and Kelly's same wide eyes. Anne's heart twisted. Alex stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching his daughter like she might disappear if he looked away. "She hasn't spoken since the explosion," he said quietly, not turning around. 6 months. Anne moved closer to Kelly, crouching down slowly. The girl's gaze flickered toward her but didn't hold. "Therapists, doctors, specialists from Switzerland." Alex's voice was flat, exhausted. None of them could reach her. "What happened?" Anne whispered. "A car bomb, meant for me." His jaw tightened. "My wife didn't survive." The silence that followed was suffocating. Alex finally turned to face her. "I need someone Kelly trusts, someone who doesn't see her as broken." He named a figure, a monthly salary that made Anne's vision blur. Work as her companion, help her heal. Anne stood slowly, shaking her head. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I want no part of a world built on guns and blood." Her voice was steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "I've seen what that world does to people." Alex's eyes darkened, but before he could respond, Kelly moved. Her small hand reached out and wrapped around Anne's fingers. Anne froze. The girl's touch was feather-light, tentative, but it was deliberate. Kelly looked up at her, those huge brown eyes searching for something Anne couldn't name. "She likes you," Alex said quietly, something like wonder in his voice. "That's rare." Anne's resolve wavered. She looked down at Kelly, at the silence that surrounded this little girl like a prison, and felt her own grief stir the sister she couldn't save, the guilt she'd carried for years. "One condition," Anne said finally. "If I ever choose to leave, I walk away clean. No questions, no consequences." Alex studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You have my word." But the look in his eyes said something else entirely. "I don't lose people easily." That night, Anne dreamed of fire. Flames licking up the sides of a car, metal twisting, glass shattering, and somewhere in the smoke, a little girl crying for help, a voice Anne couldn't reach no matter how hard she ran. She woke, gasping, her sheets damp with sweat. Outside her window, the city hummed on, indifferent. But Anne knew the truth. She'd just made a deal with the devil, and there was no going back. The Shawn mansion wasn't a home. It was a fortress disguised as one. High walls, security cameras, guards patrolling the perimeter like sentries. Inside, the rooms were vast and elegant, filled with art that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. But despite all the luxury, the house felt hollow like a mausoleum where the living still walked. Anne's first days were filled with quiet tension that pressed against her chest like a weight. Kelly didn't speak, but she followed. Wherever Anne went, kitchen, library, garden, the little girl's footsteps echoed behind her like a shadow, silent, watchful. Her brown eyes tracked Anne's every movement as if afraid she might vanish. Anne didn't push. She simply existed beside her. They read picture books in the library, sunlight streaming through tall windows. Anne voiced all the characters, doing silly accents that made Kelly's lips twitch, not quite a smile, but close. They baked cookies in the massive kitchen, flour dusting their hands and countertops. Kelly measured ingredients carefully, her small face serious with concentration. They sat at the grand piano, and Anne played simple melodies her mother had taught her years ago. Kelly pressed keys hesitantly at first, then with more confidence. And one afternoon, as Anne played a soft lullaby, Kelly began to hum. It was barely audible, a whisper of sound, but it was there. Anne's fingers froze on the keys. She glanced at Kelly, who didn't seem to notice she'd done anything extraordinary. The girl just sat there, humming along, lost in the music. Anne's throat tightened. She kept playing. Alex watched from a distance. Anne would catch glimpses of him throughout the day, standing in doorways, leaning against walls, observing with that unreadable expression carved into his features. He never interrupted, never imposed. But his presence was always there, heavy and constant. She saw things in those stolen moments, the way his shoulders sagged when he thought no one was looking, the exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes, the grief that clung to him like smoke. Beneath the ruthless exterior was a man drowning. "He doesn't sleep," Rosa whispered one evening. The housekeeper was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and hands that had seen decades of work. She'd brought Anne tea while Kelly napped upstairs. "Since the explosion?" Anne asked quietly. Rosa nodded, settling into the chair across from her. Senora Shawn Isabella, she was his light, the only person who could make him laugh. Her voice grew softer. The bomb was meant for him, a rival family. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Anne's chest ached, and Kelly saw it. No, gracias a Dios. She was at school. Rosa's eyes glistened. But she understands what happened. Children always do. Since that day, not a single word. Panic attacks, nightmares, screaming in her sleep. The therapists came and went, expensive ones, the best in the world. Rosa shook her head. None of them could reach her. She wouldn't even look at them. But you. She smiled faintly. She follows you everywhere. Anne stared into her tea, seeing her own reflection ripple on the surface. I lost my little sister when she was 9. Gang violence. Wrong place, wrong time. The words came out raw. I couldn't save her. Maybe I'm trying to save Kelly instead. Rosa reached across the table and squeezed Anne's hand. Maybe you're saving both of them. 3 weeks in, something shifted. It was late afternoon. Anne sat on the floor of Kelly's bedroom, surrounded by stuffed animals and books. They'd been reading Where the Wild Things Are. Kelly curled against Anne's side. Anne turned the page, her voice soft, and Max said, "Let the wild rumpus start." Kelly's small hand touched Anne's arm. Anne paused, looking down. The girl's eyes were wide, glistening with something Anne couldn't quite name. Kelly leaned close, her lips brushing Anne's ear, and whispered a single word, "Mama." The world stopped. Anne's breath caught. She froze, afraid that moving would shatter the moment. "Mama," Kelly whispered again, her voice cracking. Anne's eyes burned. She wrapped her arms around the little girl, holding her gently. "I know, sweetheart. I know you miss her." Kelly's small body trembled. She didn't cry, not yet, but the word had broken something open inside her. A floorboard creaked. Anne looked up. Alex stood in the doorway. His face was pale. His hands gripped the doorframe so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He stared at his daughter like he was seeing a ghost. "What?" His voice came out hoarse, shattered. "What did you do?" Anne met his gaze, still holding Kelly. "Nothing. I just listened." Alex took a step forward, then another, until he was kneeling on the floor beside them. His hands shook as he reached for Kelly, and when she turned and buried her face in his chest, a sound escaped him, half sob, half exhale. He held his daughter like she was made of glass, his eyes squeezed shut, his shoulders shaking. For the first time since Anne had met him, Alex Shawn looked small, vulnerable, human. Kelly whispered it again, muffled against his shirt. "Mama." "I know, Piccola," Alex whispered back, his voice breaking. "I know. Papa's here. I'm here." Anne started to stand, to give them privacy, but Alex's hand shot out and caught her wrist. He looked up at her, tears tracking down his face, and for the first time, the very first time, he smiled. It was faint, fragile, barely there, but it was real. "Thank you," he whispered. Anne nodded, her own eyes burning. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. She left them there, father and daughter clinging to each other in the fading light. That night, Anne sat in her room, staring out at the city lights. She'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She'd seen the man behind the monster. She'd heard a little girl's first word in 6 months, and she realized, with a clarity that terrified her, that she couldn't walk away anymore. Not from Kelly, not from Alex, not from the broken, beautiful mess they were becoming together. Outside, the city hummed on, indifferent. But inside the mansion, something had shifted. Hope had taken root in the darkness, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like healing might actually be possible. "I insist." Alex's voice left no room for argument, though Anne tried anyway. "I usually eat in my room," she said, folding Kelly's laundry. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding." He stood in the doorway of the guest suite, hands in his pockets, looking less like a mafia boss and more like a man trying to navigate unfamiliar territory. "Kelly asked for you, and I'd like you there." That last part came out quieter, almost vulnerable. Anne looked up, surprised. "Kelly asked for me," in her way. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She set 3 plates at the table. The dining room felt like a battlefield. The mahogany table stretched long enough to seat 20, though only 3 places were set, clustered at one end, as if to create intimacy in a space designed for power. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white china and silver cutlery, but it was the guards that made Anne's skin prickle. 4 of them stood along the walls, silent and watchful, hands clasped in front of them. Their eyes tracked every movement. "Do they always?" Anne gestured vaguely. "Yes." Alex pulled out a chair for her, the gesture unexpectedly gentle. "I don't take chances." "Not anymore." Kelly sat across from Anne, dressed in a soft pink sweater, her hair pulled back with a velvet ribbon. She didn't speak, but her eyes lit up when Anne smiled at her. The first course arrived butternut squash soup, garnished with herbs Anne couldn't name. She ate slowly, hyper-aware of the silence, the watching eyes, the weight of expectation. Alex cleared his throat. "You're different from the people I usually meet." Anne looked up, surprised by the attempt at conversation. "How so?" "Most people either fear me or want something from me." He studied her over the rim of his wineglass. "You do neither." "I fear you a little," Anne admitted. "I'd be stupid not to." His lips twitched. "And yet you're still here." "Because of her." Anne glanced at Kelly, who was pushing soup around her bowl. "Not you." Something flickered in his eyes, amusement, maybe, or respect. "Honest, that's rare too." "Is that why you think I'm different?" Anne raised an eyebrow. "Because I talk back? Because you're not afraid?" His gaze held hers. "Even now, surrounded by my men, sitting at my table, you're not performing, you're just here. Should I be performing?" "Everyone else does." Anne set down her spoon. "I'm not everyone else, and for the record, I'm plenty afraid. I'm just better at hiding it than most." Alex's smirk widened, genuine this time, transforming his face. "I believe that." Kelly's fork clinked against her plate, drawing their attention. The little girl was watching them both, her expression thoughtful, almost curious. The rest of dinner passed more easily. Alex asked about Anne's life before the mansion, carefully avoiding the painful parts, and she asked about Kelly's favorite things: books, music, the garden, when it rained. Alex watched his daughter throughout, something tender and broken in his eyes. After Kelly went to bed, Rosa appearing to guide her upstairs with warm efficiency, Alex caught Anne's elbow gently. "Join me for a drink?" Anne should have said no, should have retreated to her room, maintained the professional distance that was already blurring. Instead, she nodded. His private study was smaller than she expected. Leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk covered in paperwork he'd probably never let anyone else see. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. Alex poured amber liquid into 2 glasses, handed her one, then sank into the chair across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You calmed her," Alex said finally, staring into his glass. "You even calmed me. You give me too much credit." "No." He looked up, his dark eyes intense. "Before you came, this house was a tomb. Kelly was disappearing into herself. I was watching my daughter fade and couldn't do anything to stop it." His jaw tightened. "You brought her back." Anne's chest ached at the rawness in his voice. She brought herself back. She was ready. Because of you. Because she felt safe. Anne leaned forward. "You don't need me to calm you, Alex. You need to breathe. To let yourself grieve instead of drowning in guilt." His laugh was bitter. "People in my world don't get that luxury. Then maybe you're in the wrong world." The words hung between them, dangerous and true. Alex's eyes searched hers, and something shifted in the air, a charge, a pull, the line between employer and savior blurring into something neither could name. He set down his glass and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You scare me." "I scare you." Anne's voice came out breathless. "You make me want things I have no right to want." His voice dropped lower. "You make me feel human again, and that's the most dangerous thing of all." Anne's heart hammered against her ribs. She should leave, should stand up and walk away before this became something irreversible. But she didn't move. Neither did he. The moment stretched, taut and trembling. His phone buzzed. The spell shattered. Alex's face transformed instantly, the vulnerability vanishing behind a mask of cold fury. He pulled the phone from his pocket, read the screen, and his jaw clenched. "Excuse me," his voice was ice. "Business." He stood, already moving toward the door, the warmth draining from the room with him. "Alex." He paused in the doorway, not looking back. "Lock your door tonight. Don't leave your room until morning." Then he was gone. Anne sat alone in the study, the fire crackling, her untouched drink warming in her hand. She'd seen both sides of him tonight, the grieving father, the dangerous man, the human, and the monster. And the terrifying truth was this: she was drawn to both. She was falling into something that could destroy her, and she wasn't sure she wanted to stop. Outside, footsteps echoed in the hallway boots, urgent, moving, fast. Orders shouted in Italian, the sound of car engines roaring to life. Anne stood slowly, her pulse racing, and moved to the window. Below, Alex climbed into a black SUV, surrounded by armed men, his face carved from stone. She watched until the taillights disappeared into the night. Then she did exactly what he told her not to. She didn't lock her door. She waited, because something told her that whatever storm was coming, it would sweep them all up in its fury, and there would be no walking away clean. Not anymore. The mansion changed after that night. Anne felt it in the way conversations stopped when she entered rooms, in the sharp glances exchanged between Alex's men, in the tension that coiled through the hallways, like invisible wire. Something was wrong. She noticed it first at breakfast 3 days later. 2 of Alex's captains stood near the kitchen entrance, voices low and urgent. When Anne approached with Kelly, they fell silent immediately, their eyes sliding away. "Buongiorno, Miss Wilson," one said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Kelly tugged Anne's hand, pulling her toward the table, but Anne's instincts prickled. "Be careful, Mija." Rosa's warning came that afternoon while they folded laundry in the sun-drenched utility room. The housekeeper's hands moved mechanically, but her eyes were sharp with concern. "Careful of what?" "The men. They're nervous." Rosa glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. "Something's happening. I don't know what. But in this house, loyalty is currency." She met Anne's gaze. "And betrayal is blood." A chill ran down Anne's spine. "Should I be worried?" "You should be aware." Rosa squeezed her hand. "Keep Kelly close, and trust your instincts." That night, Anne couldn't sleep. She'd put Kelly to bed hours ago, read her 3 stories, stayed until the girl's breathing deepened into sleep. But Anne's mind wouldn't quiet. She wandered the mansion's corridors, her bare feet silent on marble floors. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, casting everything in silver. Then she heard voices. They came from Alex's office, raised, angry, barely contained. Anne knew she shouldn't listen, knew it was dangerous. She moved closer anyway. "You're lying to me, Marco." Alex's voice was cold fury, the kind that made grown men flinch. Someone leaked the shipment route. Someone in my inner circle. It wasn't me, Capo. I swear on my mother's grave. Your mother's been dead 10 years. Try again. A pause. Then Marco's voice, desperate. Maybe it was DeLuca's doing. They have eyes everywhere. The name hit Anne like a physical blow. DeLuca. Her vision blurred. Her breath caught. DeLuca doesn't have eyes in my house unless someone opened the door for them. Alex's voice dropped to something lethal. Who's talking to them, Marco? I don't know. But if they're moving again, get out. Find me answers by morning, or don't come back. Footsteps approached the door. Anne stumbled backward, pressing herself into an alcove as Marco emerged, his face pale and sweating. He hurried past without seeing her, muttering under his breath. She should have left then, should have returned to her room. Instead, she stepped into the doorway of Alex's office. He stood at the window, hands braced against the frame, his shoulders rigid with tension. The city lights sprawled below him like scattered embers. You shouldn't be here, he said without turning around. You worked with DeLuca. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Didn't you? Alex's shoulders stiffened. Slowly, he turned to face her. It's late, Anne. Go to bed. Answer the question. His jaw clenched. For a moment, she thought he'd order her out. Instead, he moved to the bar cart and poured himself a drink. Long ago, he said finally, his back to her, before I knew what they really were. What they were? Anne's hands trembled. They're animals, murderers. They kill innocent people for sport. Alex turned, his eyes sharp. I ended that alliance 5 years ago. Cut all ties. They murdered my sister. The words exploded out of her, raw and jagged. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Alex went still. What? Maya. She was 9 years old. Anne's voice cracked. Wrong place, wrong time. A drive-by ordered by DeLuca because a shop owner wouldn't pay protection money. She was buying ice cream. The silence that followed was suffocating. Alex set down his glass, his face pale. Anne, don't. She held up a hand, her whole body shaking. Don't tell me you're sorry. Don't tell me you didn't know. You worked with them. You made deals with monsters. Yes. His voice was quiet, devastated. I did. The admission hung between them like a confession. Anne wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. Why did you stop? Because I met Isabella. Alex's throat worked. My wife. She made me see what I'd become, what I was enabling. He took a step toward Anne. I tried to go legitimate, tried to wash the blood off, but that's not how this world works. And now someone's talking to DeLuca again. Yes. Why? Because I have something they want. Territory, power, revenge. His hands curled into fists. And apparently, I have a traitor in my house willing to give it to them. Anne's mind raced. The bomb, the one that killed Isabella, was meant for me. Alex's voice broke. DeLuca wanted me dead. They still do. The pieces clicked together, terrible and clear. And now they know about Kelly, about me. I won't let them touch you. Alex crossed the space between them in 3 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. Either of you. Do you understand? Anne looked up into his face at the grief and fury and desperation carved into his features. You can't promise that. Watch me. They stood there, inches apart, breathing hard. 2 people bound by loss and guilt, and something neither wanted to name. I should hate you, Anne whispered. I know. You were part of the world that took her from me. I know. But I don't. Her voice broke, and that terrifies me. Alex's grip softened, his thumbs brushing her shoulders. You terrify me too. Why? Because you make me want to be the man I should have been all along. His eyes searched hers. And that's the most dangerous thing you could do. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed midnight. The sound broke the spell. Alex released her, stepping back, his expression shuddering. Rosa will watch Kelly tomorrow. Stay in the mansion. Don't go near the city. What are you going to do? Find the rat. His voice turned to ice. And make sure DeLuca understands what happens when they threaten what's mine. Anne should have been frightened by the possessiveness in his tone. Instead, something in her chest tightened with feelings she couldn't name. Alex. Go to bed, Anne. He turned away, already reaching for his phone. Lock your door, and stay away from the men until I say otherwise. This time, she listened. In her room, Anne pressed her back against the locked door, her heart racing. Maya's face floated through her memory gap-toothed smile, pigtails, sticky fingers from chocolate ice cream. I couldn't save you, Anne thought. But maybe I can save them. Outside, car engines roared to life. Orders shouted in Italian. The sound of guns being loaded. Anne moved to the window and watched Alex disappear into the night, surrounded by his men, hunting the enemy within. And she realized with terrifying clarity, she wasn't just bound to this family by duty anymore. She was bound by something far more dangerous. Love. The traitor struck on a Tuesday. It had been raining all day, the kind of relentless downpour that turned the city grey and blurred the edges of everything. Anne had suggested taking Kelly to the Monarch bar for hot chocolate, while Alex attended a meeting across town. Something normal, something safe. Rosa had hesitated. Are you sure, Mija? Perhaps it's better to stay. We'll be fine, Anne had insisted, already helping Kelly into her raincoat. Marco's driving us. 2 guards will be there. It's just hot chocolate. But Rosa's eyes had held worry. Anne should have listened. The Monarch was nearly empty at 4 in the afternoon. A few regulars nursed drinks at corner tables. The bartender, a young guy named Tommy, waved when they entered. Miss Wilson, and the little miss. He grinned at Kelly, who offered a shy smile. Hot chocolate. Extra whipped cream, Anne said, guiding Kelly to a booth near the back. The 2 guards positioned themselves by the entrance and the rear exit, their presence subtle but watchful. Through the rain-streaked windows, Anne could see Marco waiting in the car outside. Everything felt normal. That should have been her first warning. Kelly colored in a book Anne had brought, her tongue poking out in concentration. Anne sipped coffee, checking her phone. A text from Alex. Meeting running long, hour, maybe 2. Everything okay? Anne typed back. We're fine. Kelly's drawing you a picture. 3 dots appeared then. Tell her I love her. Tell her yourself, Anne wrote, smiling. She set down her phone. That's when the lights went out. For 3 seconds, there was only darkness and the drum of rain. Then, the door exploded inward. Glass shattered, wood splintered. 4 figures in black masks stormed through, guns raised. Everything happened at once. One of Alex's guards shouted, reaching for his weapon. A muzzle flashed. The guard dropped. The second guard fired back, diving behind a table. Bottles exploded on the shelves behind the bar. Someone screamed. Anne's training from years of living in dangerous neighborhoods kicked in instantly. She grabbed Kelly, yanked her out of the booth, and dove behind the bar counter. Stay down, she hissed, shoving Kelly into the corner where the counter met the wall. No matter what happens, don't move. Don't make a sound. Kelly's eyes were huge, terrified. She nodded, curling into a ball. Anne's heart slammed against her ribs. Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks that made her ears ring. Glass rained down, bottles shattered, alcohol splashing across the floor. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. Someone was shouting in Italian. Find the woman. Find the girl. De Luca. The realization hit like ice water. They'd been set up. Anne's hands shook as she frantically patted the counter, searching. Her fingers closed around cold steel, a knife Tommy used for cutting fruit. It was pathetically small compared to guns, but it was something. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and called Alex. He answered on the first ring. Anne? What? Another burst of gunfire drowned out his voice. Kelly whimpered, pressing her hands over her ears. Monarch Bar, Anne gasped. Gunmen. De Luca. There, an explosion of glass. Footsteps behind the bar. A masked man appeared above her, gun raised. Time slowed. Anne saw his finger on the trigger, saw death in his eyes. She didn't think. She lunged upward with the knife, burying it in his thigh. The man screamed, stumbling backward. His gun went off the bullet, punching through the ceiling. Anne! Alex's voice roared through the phone, but Anne couldn't answer, couldn't breathe, because a second gunman had rounded the counter. His weapon pointed directly at Kelly. No! Anne threw herself in front of the little girl, arms spread wide. The gunman hesitated just for a second, and in that second, Tommy came up behind him with a baseball bat. The crack echoed through the bar. The gunman went down. More gunfire, more shouting. Through the chaos, Anne heard Alex's voice, distant and desperate, still on the phone. Anne, talk to me. She scrambled for the phone, clutching Kelly against her chest. We're here, behind the bar. Kelly's. Kelly screamed. It was a sound of pure terror, ripped from somewhere primal, and Alex heard it. The sound that followed through the phone was inhuman, a roar of rage that made Anne's blood freeze. "Hold on," he growled, and she could hear car doors slamming, engines roaring, men shouting. "Hold on, I'm coming. Do not hang up. Do you hear me?" "Okay," Anne whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Okay." Kelly sobbed against her shoulder, and Anne wrapped around her like a shield, making herself as small as possible behind the counter. The gunfire was dying down now. One of the masked men barked orders. "They're not here. Search the back." Footsteps pounded toward the storeroom. Anne held her breath. Kelly shook violently in her arms. Through the phone, Anne could hear Alex. "2 minutes. I'm 2 minutes out. Stay hidden. Stay quiet." "They're looking for us," Anne breathed. "They won't find you." His voice was steel and fury. "I swear to God, Anne, they won't." A hand grabbed Anne's hair. She screamed as she was yanked backward. Kelly ripped from her arms. "Got them," the man shouted. Kelly shrieked, kicking and flailing. Anne twisted, clawing at the man's face. Her nails drew blood. He cursed, releasing her hair to grab his gun. "Don't touch them!" Alex's voice thundered through the phone, so loud the gunman actually looked toward it. Anne used the distraction. She grabbed a broken bottle from the floor and swung with everything she had. The glass connected with the man's temple. He dropped like a stone. Anne grabbed Kelly, pulling her close. "It's okay, baby. It's okay." But it wasn't okay. Because the other gunmen had heard the commotion. They were coming back. Anne looked around desperately. The bar was destroyed. Bodies on the floor, blood pooling. No way out. She clutched Kelly tighter, her back against the wall. "Alex," she whispered into the phone. 30 seconds. The footsteps were getting closer. 3 masked men appeared, guns raised. "End of the line," one said. Anne closed her eyes, covering Kelly's body with her own. "I'm sorry," she thought. "Maya, I'm sorry. I couldn't save her either." Then, the front door exploded inward. Not kicked, not opened. Exploded. And through the smoke and rain stepped Alex Shawn, flanked by a dozen armed men, his face a mask of murderous rage. His eyes found Anne's across the destroyed bar. Then he looked at the men threatening her and Kelly. And when he spoke, his voice was death itself. Wrong move. What followed was carnage. Anne buried Kelly's face in her shoulder and held on. Held on through the gunfire, through the screams, through the sound of violence so brutal it would haunt her dreams. When silence finally fell, she looked up. Alex stood in the center of the ruined bar, breathing hard, blood on his hands, his eyes wild, their gazes locked. And then he was moving, crossing the space in seconds, dropping to his knees beside them. "Anne," he breathed, his hands framing her face, checking for injuries. "Kelly, we're okay," Anne whispered, though she was shaking so hard she could barely speak. "We're okay." Kelly turned and threw herself at her father, sobbing. Alex caught her, holding her so tightly Anne heard him whisper in Italian prayers or curses. She couldn't tell. Then his arm came around Anne too, pulling her into the embrace. And in the ruins of the Monarch Bar, surrounded by violence and blood, the 3 of them held each other like the world was ending. Because for a moment, it almost had. The world had narrowed to 3 things: Kelly's terrified breathing, the thunder of her own heartbeat, and the burning pain in her shoulder. Anne hadn't even realized she'd been shot until the adrenaline began to fade. Now, pressed against the wall behind the bar, Kelly clutched to her chest. She felt the warm wetness spreading down her arm. A graze. It had to be a graze. She couldn't think about anything else. The gunmen were regrouping. Through the ringing in her ears, Anne heard boots on broken glass, weapons being reloaded, commands being barked in Italian. "Check the back. Find them. De Luca wants proof they're dead." Kelly whimpered against Anne's neck, and Anne tightened her grip, pressing her lips to the girl's hair. "Shh, baby. Shh, Papa's coming." She had to believe it. Had to. Because if Alex didn't come, the front entrance exploded. Not figuratively. Literally exploded. The oak doors blew off their hinges in a percussion of sound and force that made Anne's ears pop. Smoke billowed inward. Rain poured through the opening like a waterfall, and through it all stepped Alex Shawn. He didn't walk. He didn't run. He moved like death given form, like vengeance carved from shadow and fury. 6 men flanked him, weapons drawn, spreading through the bar with military precision. But Anne couldn't look away from Alex. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was soaked through with rain. Blood someone else's splattered across his neck and jaw. His eyes burned with something beyond rage, beyond violence. Pure, primal fear turned lethal. One of DeLuca's men raised his gun. He didn't even finish the motion. Alex moved faster than should have been possible. A single shot. The man dropped, a red bloom spreading across his chest. "Everyone down!" one of Alex's captains roared. Gunfire erupted. Anne flattened herself over Kelly, making her body a shield, as bullets punched through what was left of the bar. Glass exploded. Wood splintered. The mirror behind the bar shattered into 1,000 pieces. But Alex's men were precise, surgical. Within seconds, DeLuca's gunmen were either down or scrambling for cover. One tried to run for the back exit. 2 shots dropped him before he made it 3 steps. Another surrendered, hands raised, screaming in Italian. Alex walked past him without a glance. One of his men handled it. A silenced shot. Silence. No witnesses. No mercy. Through the chaos, through the smoke and blood and destruction, Alex's eyes swept the bar. Searching, they found Anne. Time stopped. She was slumped against the wall behind the counter, Kelly wrapped in her arms, her shoulder dark with blood. Her face was pale, smudged with soot and tears, but her eyes were open, alive, watching him. Something in Alex's expression shattered. "Clear the room," he roared. His men moved instantly, checking bodies, securing the perimeter. 2 dragged the remaining DeLuca gunmen out the back. The others took positions by the doors and windows. Alex dropped his weapon and crossed to Anne in 3 strides. He fell to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her like he was afraid to touch, afraid she'd break, afraid she wasn't real. "Anne," her name came out strangled. "You came for us," she whispered. "Always." His hands finally landed, one cupping her face, the other reaching for Kelly. "Always. Christo. Anne, you're bleeding." "It's just a graze." Her voice shook. "Kelly's okay. She's—" Kelly lifted her head from Anne's shoulder, tears streaming down her face, and reached for her father. Alex pulled them both against his chest. His arms came around them like steel bands, holding them so tightly Anne could barely breathe. But she didn't care. She buried her face in his shoulder, Kelly sandwiched between them, and let herself shake apart. Alex was trembling, the most dangerous man in the city, who'd just walked through gunfire without flinching, who'd ended lives without hesitation, was trembling like a leaf in the wind. His face pressed into Anne's hair, Kelly's small hands fisted in his shirt, and he held them both like they were the only things anchoring him to earth. "I heard her scream," he whispered hoarsely. "On the phone. I heard." His voice broke. "If I'd been 1 minute later, but you weren't." Anne pulled back just enough to look at him. His face was raw, stripped of every mask. Tears tracked through the blood and soot on his cheeks. She'd never seen anything more human. "You saved us," she whispered. "You saved yourself." His hand cupped the back of her head, his forehead dropping to hers. "You fought. You protected her. Dio." "Anne." Kelly sniffled, her small voice breaking through. "Papa." Alex pulled back, looking down at his daughter. "See, Piccola, Papa's here." "I was scared." "I know." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hair. "I know, baby. But you were so brave. So brave." Kelly looked at Anne. "Anne saved me." Alex's eyes found Anne's again, and something passed between them, something that went beyond gratitude, beyond duty, beyond anything either of them could name. "I know she did," Alex whispered. One of his men approached cautiously. "Capo, we need to move. Police are 3 minutes out." Alex nodded but didn't let go. He looked at Anne's shoulder. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Don't lie to me." "I'm not." She winced as she shifted. "It hurts, but I can walk." Without warning, Alex stood, lifting Kelly in one arm and pulling Anne up with the other. When she swayed, he wrapped his free arm around her waist, supporting her weight. "Marco," he called. His driver appeared from the smoke, unharmed, his face grim. "Boss, get them to the car. Call Dr. Messina. Tell him I'm bringing them to the estate." "On it." As Marco moved to help Anne, Alex stopped him with a look. "I've got her." He guided Anne through the destroyed bar, Kelly still in his arms, his body positioned between them and any possible threat. His men formed a protective circle as they moved. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. Red and blue lights flickered in the distance, growing closer. Alex's SUV waited at the curb, engine running. He helped Anne into the back seat first, then handed Kelly to her before climbing in himself. The door slammed. The vehicle lurched forward, tires squealing. Through the rear window, Anne watched the Monarch bar disappear, smoldering, destroyed, sirens converging. The place where they'd first met. The place where everything had started. Now it was a graveyard. Alex pulled Kelly onto his lap, then reached for Anne, tugging her close until they were a tangle of limbs and shared breath and trembling relief. "I almost lost you," he whispered into her hair. "Both of you." Anne's hand found his, their fingers interlacing. "But you didn't. If they'd killed you," his grip tightened. "If DeLuca had taken you from me." "Alex," she squeezed his hand. "We're here. We're alive." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the truth burning in his eyes. This wasn't about duty anymore. Wasn't about Kelly or money or gratitude. This was something raw and desperate and utterly terrifying. This was love, and it was going to change everything. Kelly's small voice broke the silence. "Papa, is the bad man gone?" Alex pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Yes, baby, he's gone." "Forever?" Alex's jaw tightened, his eyes went cold. "Forever." Anne knew what that meant. DeLuca had made the worst mistake of his life tonight. He'd threatened Alex Sean's family. And in this world, that was a death sentence. The SUV raced through rain-slicked streets, carrying them away from the carnage, carrying them toward whatever came next. But for now, in this moment, they were together. They were alive. And that was enough. Dr. Messina left just after midnight. Anne's shoulder had been cleaned, stitched, and bandaged. The bullet had barely grazed her 2 inches of torn flesh that would scar but wouldn't cause permanent damage. She'd been lucky. Kelly had finally fallen asleep in Anne's bed, clutching her hand until exhaustion won. Anne had stayed until the girl's breathing deepened, then carefully extracted herself. Now she stood in the hallway outside her room, wrapped in a borrowed robe, her body aching and her mind refusing to quiet. She should sleep, should rest. Instead, she found herself walking toward the light, spilling from beneath Alex's study door. He sat at his desk, still wearing the blood-stained shirt from the bar. He hadn't showered, hadn't changed, hadn't done anything but sit there, staring at nothing. A half-empty bottle of whiskey beside him. Anne knocked softly on the doorframe. His head snapped up, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. When he saw her, something flickered across his face. Relief, grief, fear, all at once. "You should be resting. So should you." He laughed bitterly, reaching for the bottle. "I don't deserve rest." Anne stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Alex, you need to leave." The words came out flat, final. He didn't look at her. "Pack your things. I'll have Marco drive you wherever you want to go. Money, references, a new identity if you need it." His hand tightened around the glass. "Before my world kills you too." Anne's chest constricted. "I'm not leaving." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." He slammed the glass down, whiskey sloshing over the rim. "You almost died tonight." His voice cracked, raw and desperate. "They shot you. They would have killed Kelly, all because you were with me. I chose to be there. You didn't choose this." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping back. "You didn't choose to be hunted, to be a target, to have men with guns storm a bar looking for you." "You're right, I didn't." Anne took a step closer. "But I'm choosing to stay. You don't understand what I've done." His voice dropped to something hollow. "The things I've done, Anne. The blood on my hands." "Then tell me." "You don't want to know." "Tell me." The silence stretched between them, taut and trembling. Then Alex began to speak. "I've killed people." The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. "Not in self-defense, not cleanly. I've tortured men for information, burned buildings with people inside, ordered executions, destroyed families." He paced the study, unable to stand still, unable to look at her. "I built an empire on violence and fear. I made deals with monsters. I became one." His voice cracked. "And I told myself it was for family, for protection, for power." He stopped at the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "Then I met Isabella." His hand pressed against the window. "She saw what I was and loved me anyway, made me want to be better. We had Kelly, and for the first time, I thought maybe I could change. Maybe I could walk away." Tears tracked down his face, and he didn't bother wiping them away. "But you can't just walk away from this world. It follows you. It finds you." His voice broke. "The bomb was meant for me. Isabella was in the wrong car at the wrong time because I was too arrogant to think they'd touch her." He turned to face Anne, and she'd never seen anyone look so broken. My wife died because of me. Kelly lost her mother because of me. And tonight, his breath hitched. Tonight they almost took you both because of me. He moved toward her, his hands reaching out, then dropping, like he didn't deserve to touch her. I can't let that happen again, he whispered. I won't survive losing you, either of you. So you have to leave, before I destroy you too. The silence that followed was deafening. Anne studied him, this man who just confessed to murder, to torture, to building an empire on blood, who stood before her now, stripped bare, offering her an escape. She should take it, should run, should save herself. Instead, she stepped closer. You don't need forgiveness, Alex. His eyes snapped to hers. You need a reason to change. She reached up, her hand cupping his face. Be that man for her, for Kelly, the father she deserves. I don't know if I can. Yes, you do. Her thumb brushed away a tear. I've seen you with her. I've seen who you become when you hold her. That's who you really are. And what about you? His voice was barely audible. What if I can't keep you safe? Then we'll figure it out together. She stepped closer, until there was no space left between them. Be that man for me too. Something in his expression crumbled all the walls he'd built, all the armor he wore, falling away until only the man remained. I don't deserve you. Probably not. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. But I'm staying anyway. His hands finally came up, cradling her face like she was something precious and fragile. His forehead dropped to hers, and they stood there, breathing the same air, two survivors clinging to each other in the dark. I'm terrified, he whispered. So am I. What if I lose you? What if you don't? The question hung between them, full of impossible hope. And then Alex kissed her. It wasn't passionate or desperate. It wasn't the kiss of a man claiming something. It was recognition. Two broken people seeing each other clearly, seeing the scars, the grief, the guilt, and choosing each other anyway. His lips moved against hers slowly, tenderly, like he was memorizing the moment. Her hands slid up to his shoulders, feeling him tremble beneath her touch. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying. I don't know how to do this, Alex whispered. How to be both who I am and who you need me to be. You don't have to figure it out tonight. Anne's fingers threaded through his hair. We'll take it one day at a time. One day, starting with tomorrow. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and she melted into him. They stood there in the study, him still in his blood-stained shirt, her bandaged and exhausted, holding each other like the world might end if they let go. Thank you, Alex whispered into her hair. For what? For not running, for seeing me and staying anyway. His grip tightened, for giving me a reason to try. Anne pulled back just enough to look at him. You gave me one too. What's that? A family to fight for. Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips gentle and reverent. I love you, he whispered against her mouth. God help me, I love you. Anne's breath caught. She'd known, had felt it building between them, but hearing the words made it real, made it terrifying, made it beautiful. I love you too, she whispered back. And in that moment, in the study with its blood-stained shirt and empty whiskey bottle and confessions hanging in the air, something shifted. Not a happy ending. Not yet. But a beginning. A chance. A choice to fight for something worth saving. Outside, dawn was beginning to break, pale light creeping across the city, and for the first time in months, Alex Shawn allowed himself to hope. Because she was here, she was staying, and together, maybe they could build something beautiful from all the broken pieces. Come on, Anne whispered, taking his hand. Let's check on Kelly. Alex nodded, his fingers interlacing with hers. They walked through the quiet mansion together, not employer and employee, not mafia boss and bartender, but something infinitely more precious. Two people choosing love in the midst of darkness, and refusing to let go. 6 months later, the Shawn mansion woke differently now, not with the sharp click of boots on marble or hushed conversations behind closed doors, but with the sound of piano keys, hesitant at first, then confident, drifting through the sunlit halls. Anne paused in the kitchen doorway, coffee cup warming her hands, and listened. Kelly sat at the grand piano in the living room, her small fingers dancing across the keys. She was playing the lullaby Anne had taught her months ago, but now she'd added her own flourishes, little trills and variations that made it uniquely hers. And she was singing, Stella, stellina, la notte s'avvicina. Her voice was clear and sweet, no longer trapped behind silence and grief. Rosa appeared beside Anne, wiping her hands on her apron, tears glistening in her eyes. Every morning now. She plays every morning. I know, Anne whispered, her own throat tight. You did that, Mija. No. Anne shook her head. She did it herself. She was ready. She was ready because you showed her it was safe. The song ended. Kelly turned on the bench, spotting them in the doorway, and her face split into a grin, the kind of unburdened joy that belonged to children who'd found their way back to light. Anne, did you hear? I didn't make any mistakes. I heard, sweetheart. It was beautiful. Kelly hopped off the bench and ran to her, wrapping small arms around Anne's waist. Anne set down her coffee and hugged her back, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and morning sunshine. This was what healing looked like. The guards still stood watch fewer now, but present. Alex had learned his lesson about vulnerability, but the atmosphere had changed. Where there'd once been cold efficiency, there was now warmth, conversations, even laughter. The mansion had become a home. Alex appeared in the kitchen archway, freshly showered, wearing jeans and a casual button-down instead of his usual armor of tailored suits. 6 months ago, Anne never would have believed such a sight possible. Morning, he said, his voice still rough from sleep. Kelly launched herself at him. Papa, I played the whole song. I heard. He scooped her up, kissing her forehead. You were perfect, Piccola. Anne taught me the ending part. Alex's eyes found Anne's over Kelly's head, and the look he gave her made her breath catch. Love, gratitude, wonder, all tangled together. Anne teaches you many things, he said softly. The city had noticed the changes. Sean diversifies, portfolio exits underground operations. Mafia boss turned philanthropist. Alex Sean's surprising pivot. The Sean Foundation announces $50 million for youth programs. The headlines had been relentless, some mocking, some skeptical, most disbelieving. They're saying you've gone soft, Anne had told him one night, reading the news on her tablet. Alex had looked up from the legal documents he'd been reviewing contracts for real estate ventures, legitimate business acquisitions. Let them say it. It doesn't bother you? The only opinions that matter are in this house. He'd reached across the desk, taking her hand. Everything else is noise. It hadn't been easy. Dismantling an empire never was. There'd been resistance, threats, attempts at retaliation, but Alex had been methodical, strategic, cutting ties, paying debts, making it clear that the Sean family was out. Some hadn't believed it. Those people no longer existed, but the violence was different now. Surgical, final. Not an empire defending territory, but a man protecting his family. And then silence. The underworld had learned. Alex Sean was no longer a player, but touch his family, and he'd remind everyone why they'd feared him in the first place. There's something I want to show you, Alex said one evening after Kelly had gone to bed. He drove them himself, no Marco, no guards through the city streets until familiar neon lights appeared through the windshield. The Monarch Bar. Anne's breath caught. Alex, it's ours now. He parked, turning to face her. I bought it 3 months ago, had it completely renovated. They'd avoided this place since the shooting. The memories were too raw, too violent. But when Alex opened the door and guided her inside, Anne gasped. It was transformed. Gone were the bullet holes and bloodstains. The bar gleamed with new mahogany. The mirrors had been replaced with vintage brass. Soft Edison bulbs cast warm light across leather booths and polished floors, but it was still recognizably the monarch just reborn. Why? Anne whispered. Because this is where it started. Alex took her hand, leading her to the center of the room. This is where you saw a crying child and a desperate man, and you didn't run. Anne's eyes burned. Alex, you walked toward my daughter when everyone else stepped back. His voice was rough with emotion. You saw her pain, and mine, and you chose us anyway. Maybe you just needed love, Anne said softly, echoing the words she'd spoken so long ago. Alex smiled, that real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. The smile of a man who'd found his way back to himself. And I found it. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Anne's breath stopped. I'm not asking yet, Alex said quickly. Not tonight. But someday when Kelly's ready, when you're ready, I want you to know that this is forever for me. He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. You saved us, Anne. Let me spend the rest of my life returning the favor. Tears streamed down her face. You already have. He cupped her face, kissing her gently. Then, We're even. Not even close. Then I'll spend forever trying. They stood there, in the place where violence had once reigned, holding each other in the warm light, proof that even the darkest places could be transformed. The door burst open. Surprise! Kelly ran in, followed by Rosa, Marco, and half a dozen of Alex's most trusted men, the ones who'd become family rather than employees. "Did you think we'd let you reopen without a party?" Rosa demanded, balancing a cake. Kelly grabbed Anne's hand, bouncing excitedly. "Papa said we could have a celebration, for new beginnings." Anne looked at Alex, who shrugged with a sheepish grin. "She made me promise. You planned this weeks ago." Music started playing, nothing fancy, just someone's phone connected to speakers, and Kelly pulled Anne toward the dance floor. "Dance with me." Anne laughed, letting herself be led, and soon they were spinning across the polished floor. Kelly's laughter echoed off the walls, bright and uninhibited. Alex watched from the bar, drink in hand, surrounded by his people, but his eyes never left the two of them. The woman who'd saved them, the daughter who'd found her voice again, his family, his redemption. Marco appeared beside him, raising his glass. "To new beginnings, boss." "To new beginnings," Alex echoed. But as he watched Anne spin Kelly around, both of them laughing, he thought, "No, not new beginnings. This is what I should have been fighting for all along." Later, after the impromptu party wound down and Kelly fell asleep in Anne's lap, Alex carried his daughter to the car. Anne walked beside him, her hand in his, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, Alex felt peace. True, bone-deep peace. They drove home through quiet streets, Kelly asleep in the back, Anne's head resting on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For letting me stay. For trusting me with her. With you." Alex kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for seeing past the monster. There was never a monster. Just a man who needed a reason to hope. And you gave me two." Anne lifted her head, looking back at Kelly, then up at Alex. "We gave each other everything." That night, after tucking Kelly into bed, Alex and Anne stood on the mansion's balcony, overlooking the city lights. "Do you ever regret it?" Alex asked quietly. "Staying?" Anne turned to him, taking both his hands. "Not once. Even after everything? The violence, the fear? Even then," she squeezed his hands, "because look what we built from it." Alex pulled her close, and they stood there, two people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to build something beautiful. Inside, Kelly stirred in her sleep, smiling. Outside, the city hummed on, and in that moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Sometimes love doesn't wait for peace. It builds it one heartbeat at a time.